Good morning everyone in Year 1 and welcome to your English lesson today on Tuesday the 12th of January. And your learn objective today is to explore the features of a dragon, okay? So if we go back to yesterday's work, I asked you to describe the dragon's appearance in George and the Dragon. I want you to look closely at his head, his scales, his wings, his tail and his claws. And to do that, you use the Dazzling Dragons adjective sheet to help you find really interesting adjectives to describe each part of that dragon. What I'd like you to do today, and I want you to have about 2 or 3 minutes with your adult at home, to think of an interesting adjective, or maybe if you can think of more than one interesting adjective, that would be lovely, to describe the dragon's teeth and his scales, okay? Mr. Gardner's example is, the enormous dragon has got terrifying teeth and shining scales. Okay, now in my sentence, I've used a capital letter at the beginning. I've used an alliteration in there as well. Terrifying teeth, okay, as the t sound. And I've also used 3 adjectives to describe it. Enormous for dragon. So I'm thinking back to when we looked at the enormous turnip. That was a really good word I could use to link back to my other topic to bring to this one. The enormous dragon, terrifying teeth. Just say it describes to us, doesn't it, about how fearsome this dragon is. And his scales are not just scales, they are shining scales. So when the sun goes on its scales and on its skin, they shine and dazzle, okay? And in red, I've highlighted the word and because Mr. Gardner has used a conjunction. And that tells us, puts 2 bits of information together and adds extra stuff to it. So it makes it a bit more interesting to read. So yeah, pause the video here and about 2 or 3 minutes, think of an interesting adjective or more than one to describe the dragon's teeth and scales. Off you go. Okay, now you've done that, I'd like you to read it out to your parents, and I hope you've had some really interesting adjectives used to describe the dragon's teeth and his scales too. Okay. But what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the powers that a dragon has. So we've looked at the description and the appearance of a dragon. We're going to look at the powers of a dragon today. Okay. What I want you to do is, I want you on a piece of paper, or if you want to write it on a Google Doc, it is entirely up to you. I want you to write a list of ideas about what you already know about the powers a dragon has. Okay. Again, spend about 2 or 3 minutes with your adult at home, writing down the powers that you already know a dragon has. Think back to movies that you've watched, think back to books that you've read and pictures that you've seen about of dragons. Off you go. Okay, I hope you've got some really interesting ideas already before we look closely into these powers of dragons. So, to help us find information, we can use a non-fiction book to help us. Now, a non-fiction book is very different to what we read in school in terms of fiction books. For example, when we come in to school of a morning on registration, after we've registered, Mr. Gardner will read you a book, and normally what you choose is a fiction book, so it's made up. Tell your adult now, what do you think a non-fiction book is, okay? I'm going to give you 30 seconds, okay? Off you go. I hope you've told your adult about that non-fiction book description and what it means to be a non-fiction book, and I hope that you're right in thinking that a non-fiction book tells us information and it gives us lots of facts and contains images and photographs to help us. I'm going to read this non-fiction book to you today, the page from a section of the non-fiction book about dragons, and I want you to think and listen carefully about the powers that a dragon has, okay? So, the dragons in many stories breathe fire. Other dragons fly in the air. Some myths tell us that dragon blood is like a magic medicine. And if you look at the image just here, you can see that this dragon is very fearsome and blowing lots of really hot fire from its mouth. And did you know that in some places people believe dragons could control the rain? Do you know Mr. Gardner didn't know that before I read this book, so that's why reading really helps us learn new information. Now, I've highlighted some of the key bits from that text. So, I found out that a dragon can breathe fire. That's a really key power that a dragon has. I also highlighted that they can fly high in the air with their huge wings, their gigantic wings. And that dragon blood is like a magic medicine in some myths as well. So that's a really important power that a dragon can have. And finally, the one that I didn't know until today was that a dragon could control the rain and the weather. That's a very, very key power. So it's very, very powerful, a dragon is. Okay? What I want you to do today is read through the non-fiction text, which is on this PowerPoint and also on the Google Docs and on our school website. I want you to highlight all the key powers a dragon has, just like Mr. Gardner did here. Okay, so I highlighted the key parts. And I want you to write down a list using bullet points. So these are bullet points here. So if you draw a bullet point first, that will tell us in a list about the types of powers that a dragon has. And it makes it easier to read. Because next week you're going to be writing a non-chronological report, which we'll look at later on this week. And you'll need to include lots of bullet points for that. So some examples that I found from that text: just a fearsome dragon, like the one in George and the Dragon, can breathe burning fire. And I've used an exclamation mark at the end to make my sentence sound a bit more exciting. And another fact, a terrifying dragon's blood can be used as magic medicine. Now I like magic medicine because it's alliteration, isn't it? It's got that sound in magic and medicine. Okay, so there's my example from today. Let's see what you can do. Okay, have fun. I hope to see some really lovely English work today sent through either on the email or on Google Docs. And take care.